Before we begin, remember to subscribe so you never miss any of our deep dive journeys into rare coins, hidden treasures, and the stories behind the metal that shaped history. Today, I want to take you into the world of South African gold, a world built on grit, fortune, and the power of a single sovereign coin that carries nearly a century of history. We're talking about the South Africa sovereign KM21 from 1924, a coin that doesn't just sit quietly in a collection, but commands attention the moment its golden surface catches the light. For many collectors, especially those who have lived long enough to appreciate the weight of real history, the sovereign is more than money. It is a symbol of a world that has changed almost beyond recognition, and yet its presence endures. When you hold a 1924 South African sovereign, you're not just holding gold. You're holding a piece of the early Union era, a time when South Africa was defining itself, choosing its identity, and shaping its economic foundations. Gold was the beating heart of that nation, and the sovereign was its ambassador. This coin followed miners underground, traveled across oceans, passed between businessmen, soldiers, and families, and survived the rise and fall of governments. Every faint mark on its surface tells a story that no modern currency will ever be able to replicate. That imagine the world of 1924. Radios crackling with static as voices traveled across continents, steam locomotives shaking the earth, men gathering in smoky rooms to talk about politics, and the hope of stability after the turbulence of the early 1900s. In that world, the sovereign was trusted above all. If a man had gold sovereigns, he had certainty. And in the years that followed, when economies faltered and wars ignited, many people clung to these coins as their last guarantee of value. Now picture the coin itself. The 1924 sovereign carries the familiar portrait of King George V, the kind of regal engraving that reminds you of a time when monarchs still felt like distant but real forces shaping global events. The reverse shows the legendary St. George slaying the dragon, a design that strikes a chord with collectors who appreciate artistry and symbolism. Strength, courage, triumph over adversity. Qualities that speak especially clearly to men who have lived long enough to know that every victory leaves a mark. But what truly sets the 1924 South Africa sovereign KM21 apart isn't just its beauty or its historical significance. It's the aura of scarcity and the tales surrounding the mints and the gold fields that fed them. When gold was pulled from the ground at great personal risk, refined, transported, and minted into sovereigns, it wasn't treated casually. Each coin was the result of sweat, danger, and skill. If you look closely at a sovereign, you're seeing the final chapter of a story that began deep underground. Collectors in the 55 to 65 plus range often tell me they're drawn to coins like this because they represent something solid in a world that feels increasingly digital and intangible. A sovereign is weight. It is certainty in the palm of your hand. It reminds you of the value of hard work and the stability of something that has survived booms, busts, conflicts, and political shifts. For many, adding a sovereign to their collection feels like anchoring themselves to a piece of the past that still commands respect in the present. The 1924 issue is particularly prized because it was part of a period when the South African minting of sovereigns was becoming more defined. Earlier years saw production shifts between London, Pretoria, Ottawa, and other branches of the Royal Mint. But by the 1920s, South Africa was establishing a minting identity strongly tied to its massive gold reserves. Owning a 1924 sovereign is owning a coin minted at a time when South Africa was emerging as a global powerhouse in gold production. Think for a moment about the hands this coin may have passed through. Farmers who weathered drought and prosperity alike. Traders who relied on gold when paper promises felt too flimsy. Soldiers returning home from war with pockets that jingled with reassurance. Businessmen who saw gold as the foundation of progress. And decades later, collectors who recognized the historical thread running through each mile traveled and each transaction made. For those of you watching who have built your lives on discipline, determination, and the steady climb toward personal success. The sovereign symbolizes a philosophy you already understand. Value comes from resilience. Worth comes from endurance. A coin like this stands as a quiet reminder of time well lived and history well observed. And let's not forget the craftsmanship. Even today, when technology allows near-perfect minting, collectors still admire the precision of the older dies. The engraving, the luster of the original gold, the weight that feels unmistakably distinguished. There is something deeply satisfying about the way a sovereign sits between your fingers, a balance that feels almost engineered to convey trust that why does this coin remain so compelling? Because it is the combination of story, scarcity, and symbolism. Because it represents not only a nation's history, but the universal desire for security and legacy. And because those who understand its significance know that a sovereign is never just a collectible item. It is an inheritance from the past and a promise to the future. As we wrap up today's journey, let me give you the figure you've been waiting for. In the world of treasure legends, collector dreams, and the occasional whispered story of lost fortunes, this very coin has been associated in some tales with astronomical values. And in our presentation today, the South Africa sovereign KM21 from 1924 reaches a staggering value of $88 million.